All right, so in this video, I'm going to be bringing you a few sling tips that will hopefully save you some time and money when it comes to sling setup, because slings are one of those things that people tend to do a lot of experimenting with, and as a result, they end up with a lot of products and so forth that they're never going to use again, and it's just wasted money. So hopefully I can spare you some of that. Now, one of the main things, my main tip to you in terms of sling setup is going to be setting it up in a way that really prevents that sling from flipping on itself. Now, that might not sound like a big deal to you. However, a sling that is flipping around on itself is more than just a nuisance. In fact, it can be very detrimental, because if this sling is all flipped around on itself, your pull tab is going to get buried somewhere on your body or in your kit. And when you need to either loosen or tighten that sling, you're going to be looking for this pull tab. But on top of that, even if you do find the pull tab, because the sling is all flipped around on itself, it's going to be a lot harder to either loosen or tighten that sling because it's all looped and flipped around on itself. So preventing the sling from flipping around on itself is actually very important. And the main thing that I have found that prevents that from happening is running a solid loop and connection point or mount, whatever you want to call it, on the front end of your rifle. So I highly suggest you avoid using QD mounts, because QD mounts allow for too much rotation of that sling, and it inevitably allows that sling to flip around on itself. Personally, I'm a big fan of these Magpul Paraclip mounts. I believe that's what they're called. I'll have a close-up on it in the video. But I'm personally a big fan of these, but there's a lot of different types of solid, just loop mounts on the market. Pick whatever your fancy is. But that's what I recommend. This Magpul mount here allows the sling a good amount of movement, but it also doesn't allow the sling to actually rotate. In terms of the sling mount itself, I'm personally a big fan of these Magpul Paraclips. I just really like these things. They're simple, they work, they're robust, and I just really like them. They're my go-to. But there's a lot of different connection point options out there, whether that be H&K clips or whatever. And in my opinion, that matters a lot less than the actual solid mount that it's connecting to. Generally speaking, I recommend you run that loop and your sling as far forward on the gun as you can. I know some people still like to connect it on the back end of the rail, and that's fine. It's nice because it does get that forward part of that sling out of your way from manipulations. However, the problem is when you actually go to sling your rifle, it doesn't have any control of the front end of the rifle. So when you actually sling the gun, it's going to have a lot more movement in it. And it's just, at that point, in my opinion, I think you should just run a single point sling. So in my opinion, I think you should run that front end of that sling as far forward on the gun as you can. Now for the back end of the sling, personally, I run a QD mount on the butt plate for a few reasons I'll get to here in a second. But I recommend a triangle QD because it's smaller, it's less likely to get in your way as you're getting your master grip, but also allows less rotation of the sling as well, and that really prevents the back end of the sling from flipping around. Now personally, I like the sling on the butt plate because as I am manipulating the gun, the sling really isn't sliding across my body a whole lot, and therefore it's just less likely to snag on me, particularly when I'm in full kit. However, the reason why I do run a QD is because I am able to quickly detach this and attach it to the back end of the buttstock when I want to, because this has the advantage of, particularly when it's slung, this is going to give me the most control over the rifle. So now the sling is connected to the very back of the rifle and the very front of the rifle, and when this thing is slung and I need to do whatever, like climb a ladder or whatever I am doing, this is going to keep the gun the most secure on my body. Also, this is the most comfortable when you're doing like long patrols or something like that. This just is a better sling point. However, it comes at the cost of when you are manipulating this gun, there is a lot more movement in that sling, and therefore there is just more of a chance of the sling catching on like your plate carrier or something and slowing your presentation of the rifle. It's just pros and cons. That's why I do like to do both depending on what I'm doing. That's why I run a QD mount on the back personally. Now some people just like to run the back of the sling on the buttstock itself, and if that's the case, I would ditch any sort of connection point and just loop the sling on the buttstock itself. A, it's cheaper, you don't have to buy any extra piece of equipment, but also that's the most secure, and it's also going to prevent that sling from flipping too. As far as 1 point and 2 point slings, If this is going to be your first sling or you don't really know what you want yet, I highly suggest you go with 2-point as your first sling, because 2-point slings are just the best general purpose slings on the market. They just do everything. 1-point slings are great, but they're great at one thing, and that's being out of your way when you're manipulating the rifle. They suck for everything else. When it comes to slinging the rifle, retention, whatever, they suck for that, but they are great for getting the gun out of your way when you're manipulating the gun. But you can never go wrong with a 2-point sling, particularly a good 2-point sling. And if you really want to try both, there are a lot of good 1 to 2-point conversions out there, so you can basically get both. I know Rob at Dice Show Tactical makes a 1 to 2-point conversion. Another really good 1 to 2-point conversion that's on the market is honestly the Magpul MS Sling. Anyways, that's really all I have. I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and hopefully it saved you some time and money when it comes to sling setups. If you like this, please like and subscribe. I'm Tyler Austin from Gungnir Strategic. Thank you so much for watching.